My fiancé tried to trap me for my house and business, so I pretended to fall for it, secretly froze the accounts, and left her came back to nothing. I'm a 33-year-old male who met Allison, a 31-year-old female, 4 years ago at a local business networking event. I was 29, running my own restaurant that I'd opened after years of saving and planning. It was nothing fancy, just good food at decent prices with a loyal customer base. The restaurant cleared about $95,000 a year after expenses, which wasn't making me rich but kept me comfortable. I'd spent 3 years working 80-hour weeks at 2 different restaurants while living in a studio apartment with my college roommate. Every cent I could save went into my business plan. When I finally secured the SBA loan to cover the remaining startup costs, I slept on the restaurant floor for the first month, showering at the gym across the street. That's the part of entrepreneurship no one posts about on Instagram. I owned a modest 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood, bought it foreclosure and fixed up myself. The previous owners had defaulted after a messy divorce, and the place needed serious work, a new roof, updated electrical, and a kitchen remodel. I did most of it myself on days the restaurant was closed, learning from YouTube videos and a retired contractor who lived down the street. Allison worked at one of those upscale boutiques downtown, where everything cost 3 times what it should. She was assistant manager, but you'd think she was CEO from the way she carried herself. Long brown hair always perfectly styled, nails always freshly done, clothes always precisely on trend. She had this practiced way of making you feel like the most interesting guy in the room while simultaneously making you want to impress her more. Her sales technique carried over to dating. She'd ask questions about my business with what seemed like genuine interest, then casually mention how impressed she was with real entrepreneurs. My sister Kate saw through the act immediately. The first time they met at a family dinner, Kate pulled me aside afterward. "That woman is faker than my coworker's LinkedIn profile," she said. I brushed it off as Kate being overprotective. She'd always been suspicious of the women I dated, but this time her warning had an urgency I ignored. "So you're really into this one?" Kate asked when I mentioned getting serious with Allison. "Yeah, she's different, ambitious, connected, knows what she wants." "What she wants is your wallet," Kate muttered. I pretended not to hear. In retrospect, the red flags were everywhere. Allison never offered to pay for anything, not even when I was clearly stretching to cover an expensive dinner she'd suggested. Our first date cost me $190 at some fusion place where the portions would starve a toddler. My buddy Cole warned me early on too. "Dude, you're making local business owner money and she's living a trust fund lifestyle. Do the math." But when you're sleeping with someone who looks like they could be in a toothpaste commercial, your calculator mysteriously breaks. Cole and I had been tight since college. He'd helped me move equipment into the restaurant when I first opened, working for nothing but pizza and the promise of future discounts. Dating Allison felt like getting a surprise promotion. She knew the hostess at every restaurant, got us into exclusive events, and her apartment looked like something from a design catalog. Her apartment was the first warning sign I completely missed. Assistant manager at a clothing boutique doesn't pay for a 1,200 square foot downtown apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and custom closets. When I asked how she afforded it, she vaguely mentioned family help and quickly changed the subject. I later found out her parents paid half her rent. She was 27. She made it seem like my stability was some novel character trait. "I love that you've built something real," she'd say. The first 2 years were good. We moved in together after 16 months, taking a downtown apartment. We had our routines. We worked. Then she got promoted to assistant manager. Suddenly, her calendar was packed with staff dinners and industry events. When I asked if I could join one of these events sometime, there was always a convenient reason why it wouldn't work. "It's just the girls tonight," or "it's more of an internal thing," or my favorite, "you'd be bored." It's all fashion talk. I wasn't concerned though. We'd been solid. 4 months later, I bought the ring. Just over 2 carats costing $18,500. My cousin got me a deal, but it still wiped out my savings and maxed a credit card. Allison had casually mentioned her college roommate's ring and how she'd always thought that was the minimum for a respectable proposal. I proposed on our 3-year anniversary at the restaurant where we had our first date. I got down on one knee, said all the right things. She cried, said yes, then immediately took 3 different angle shots of the ring and posted them on Instagram before we'd even ordered appetizers. The caption read, "Dreams do come true. He did good." The comment section exploded with fire emojis and OMG goals from women I'd never met. I remember thinking, this is what all the hard work was for. What a chump. Fast forward a year into our engagement. Wedding planning consumed every waking moment, venue visits, catering tastings, arguments about letterpress versus digital invitations. Allison's parents contributed $10,000, but somehow the wedding budget had ballooned to $48,000. The difference came from my savings, restaurant profits, and a home equity loan I kept quiet about. That $10,000 from her parents came with strings, too. Her mom had to approve every decision, from the flowers to the table settings. For people contributing less than 20% of the cost, they sure acted like majority shareholders. The wedding date was set for May 22nd, 8 weeks away. The honeymoon in Maui was already booked and paid for. Meanwhile, I'd been house hunting in secret. I found a 4-bedroom in Ridgewood Heights, a solid neighborhood, a reasonable location for expanding my restaurant concept. It needed some updates but had potential. The place had been sitting on the market for 97 days because it needed cosmetic work, which meant I could negotiate the price down. The closing was set for 2 weeks before the wedding. I planned to surprise Allison with the keys after the reception. I had to get my dad as a co-signer since my credit had taken a hit from all the wedding expenses. The house had good bones, 2,800 square feet, a big backyard. The previous owners started updates but ran out of money. I figured I'd finish it over time, just like I had with my first place. Work had been brutal. The summer season was ramping up and I'd been putting in 60-hour weeks trying to keep the restaurant staffed and running smoothly. 2 servers quit with no notice, and my sous chef was threatening to leave for a corporate gig that offered benefits I couldn't match. Allison was swamped too. The boutique was preparing for their seasonal changeover, which apparently required lots of late nights and weekend inventory sessions. When I pointed out that most retail inventory happens during closed hours, she got defensive. Our process is different. We're not some big box store. That Thursday I came home early. We'd barely seen each other all week, so I thought I'd surprise her with takeout from that Mexican place she's always talking about. I'd picked up enchiladas, guacamole, and those churros she loves. I heard her voice as I put my key in the lock. She was on the balcony, phone pressed to her ear, laughing in that way she does when talking to someone important, higher pitched than normal, with a calculated breathiness. I set the food down quietly and moved toward the sound of her voice, planning to surprise her. "The ring is gorgeous. You should see it in person," she was saying. "Almost makes up for having to screw him for the past 3 years." I froze, keys still in my hand. God, the wedding planning is exhausting. His family wants a church ceremony. Can you imagine? So basic. But I've got to play nice until we're married. Divorce is where the real money is. My throat tightened. I should have made some noise, let her know I was there. Instead, I stood perfectly still. Maui is going to be amazing, though. I've been checking out the hidden beaches and that resort spa. I've already booked multiple treatments. A pause. "No, I haven't told him you're meeting me there yet. He thinks you're sending me on that business trip to Denver right after we get back." Another pause. I leaned closer to the wall separating us. "Of course, I've thought it through. I'll tell Chris I need space after the honeymoon, that I rushed into marriage, play the cold feet card. Men are so simple, he'll blame himself." I felt something shift inside me, a fundamental support beam cracking under pressure. Once the house closes, we'll have a shared asset I can claim half of in the separation. Between that and clearing out the joint accounts, I should walk away with enough to set us up nicely while I transition. She laughed again. I know. Just 6 more weeks of playing the doting fiancé. The sex has been so infrequent anyway, he barely notices when I'm not in the mood." I backed away silently, grabbed my keys and left. The Mexican food sat forgotten on the counter. At that moment, all the hints I'd ignored suddenly clicked. The mysterious work functions, the private phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room, the gradual loss of interest in physical intimacy with me, the random business trips with her boutique manager that never seemed to produce any actual business results. I drove to Cole's place. He'd been my best friend since college and was going to be my best man. I found him in his garage, working on his motorcycle. "You look like someone just pissed in your coffee," he said when he saw my face. "I need a drink," was all I replied. 3 drinks later, I told him everything. The phone call, the plan to clean out our accounts after the wedding, someone flying to Maui, the house I'd been ready to surprise her with. Cole listened without interrupting, then said simply, "What's the move? You need to protect yourself financially, legally, all of it." Cole was tactful enough not to pile on with "I told you so," but his expression said everything. He'd always thought Allison was using me. Now we had confirmation. "Stay here tonight," he offered. "Spare room's yours. We'll figure it out in the morning." I did. When Allison called around midnight, wondering where I was, I texted back that I was helping Cole with his bike and would crash at his place. She sent back a kissy face emoji that made me want to throw my phone through the wall. The next morning, we sat at Cole's kitchen table with notepads and laptops, mapping out my escape plan. Cole's an IT guy who'd gone through a nasty breakup 2 years earlier when he caught his girlfriend running a dating profile on the side, so he approached it like debugging malicious code. First, finances. "What's your current setup?" I explained our structure, my personal account where my restaurant income landed, her personal account, and our joint account for bills and wedding expenses. How much is in the joint right now? About $19,000, mostly for final wedding payments and honeymoon spending money, I said. Cole nodded. And the house closing is when? May 8th, 2 weeks before the wedding. Just my name on the mortgage, but I was planning to add her after. Keep it that way. Act normal. We need time to set everything up correctly. Cole pulled up a calendar on his laptop. Let's work backwards. Wedding is May 22nd. House closing is May 8th. Today is March 28th. That gives us just over 5 weeks to execute. Bro, Cole said, tapping his pen against the notepad. You realize you just dodged a financial nuke, right? Like, you were about to hand this chick the launch codes to your entire life. Trust me, I'm aware. We outlined every shared expense, the apartment lease through December, furniture mostly purchased together, vacation reservations, wedding vendor contracts. Next, we documented my assets from before the relationship, the restaurant, my saved restaurant earnings, my original house, now rented out. For the next 3 hours, we outlined a strategy. I'd need to secure new accounts at a different bank, document all assets I'd brought into the relationship, prepare to break the apartment lease, and figure out which wedding vendors would refund deposits. This, Cole said, pointing to our list of non-refundable expenses, is the jerk tax. Consider it the cost of not being financially gutted for the next decade. He was right. Some money would be lost, but I could minimize the damage. It was a small price to pay to escape the trap. We created a timeline. First, open new bank accounts and begin documenting assets. Then, secure important documents, begin vendor cancellations, find storage space, and slowly move personal items, secure housing, notify the landlord of lease termination, complete the house closing, make final preparations, and finally, execute the move during Allison's bachelorette weekend. That night, I went home like nothing was wrong. I found Allison on the couch, scrolling through honeymoon activities on her iPad. Babe, what do you think about a private sunset cruise? She asked, not looking up. Whatever you want, I replied and went to take a shower. Standing under the hot water, I thought about how easily the lies had been flowing from her, how convincingly she could look me in the eye while planning my financial destruction. It was both impressive and terrifying. Over dinner, pasta she'd ordered in, as Allison rarely cooked, she chatted about wedding details and work drama. At one point, she mentioned the house hunting we'd been doing together. I really like that place in Briarwood Estates, she said, referring to a neighborhood way above our budget. I know you thought it was too expensive, but maybe we could revisit it. I'd be willing to pick up extra shifts to help with the mortgage. The calculated performance was remarkable. She'd never once offered to contribute to our housing costs before, but with the wedding approaching, she was laying the groundwork to look like an equal financial partner. We can talk about it after the wedding, I answered noncommittally. Right now, I'm just focused on getting through all these vendor payments. You're so practical, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. That's why we're good together. I dream big, and you figure out how to make it happen. That night, I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, mentally inventorying what in this apartment I actually cared about keeping. The list was surprisingly short. Over the next 2 weeks, I methodically dismantled the life I'd been building with Allison while maintaining the facade that everything was normal. Each day was a carefully calculated series of moves. I opened new accounts, transferred most of my personal savings, and redirected my upcoming restaurant deposits. I retrieved important documents from our apartment during her weekly yoga class and secured a safe deposit box. I called our landlord directly and paid the 2-month penalty to break our lease, effective June 1st. I contracted movers for May 8th, scheduled furniture delivery for the new house, and quietly canceled wedding vendor agreements one by one, collecting whatever refunds were possible. I moved my personal items to my parents' garage in phases, explaining them as wedding gifts that needed storage. Some vendors were surprisingly sympathetic when I explained the situation. I recovered what I could. The venue kept most of the money. At home, I was the same old Chris, occasionally distracted by work but generally supportive of wedding decisions. I agreed to the overpriced wedding planner, confirmed my tux fitting, and nodded along to discussions about signature cocktails. Do you think your cousin Jim might be seated too close to the bar? Allison asked one evening. I'm worried he'll drink too much and make a scene. I'm sure it'll be fine, I replied, knowing none of it would ever happen. The mental separation was already complete. I looked at her and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just recognition that I was dealing with someone fundamentally dishonest. It was almost fascinating, watching her perform the role of devoted fiancé while I knew what she really thought of me. The closing on the house went smoothly. I got the keys on a Friday afternoon, drove straight there, and walked through the empty rooms, trying to imagine the life I'd planned versus the one I was now facing. The difference didn't feel as stark as I expected. That weekend was Allison's bachelorette party in Miami. The moment her Uber pulled away, I sprang into action. The movers arrived 30 minutes later. 4 hours later, everything I cared about was loaded into a truck headed for the new house. I'd carefully sorted through our possessions during the preceding weeks, making lists of what was mine before the relationship, what we'd purchased together, and what I was willing to surrender to avoid complications. In the end, I took my clothes, personal items, family heirlooms, and a few pieces of furniture I'd owned pre-Allison. I left behind the expensive sectional sofa she'd insisted on, the dining table we'd spent too much on, and most of the kitchen items. What remained were easily replaceable items and things we'd purchased together that I was happy to leave behind. Before I left, I wrote a note. I drew a middle finger on a piece of paper and wrote beneath it, "Weddings cancelled. I heard your call." I left it on the kitchen counter next to her engagement ring. Then I went to my new house, where Cole was waiting with a case of drinks and a PlayStation he'd brought over. We ordered pizza, sat on camping chairs in my empty living room, and played Madden until 2 in the morning. "To dodging bullets," Cole said, raising his drink. "Not just dodging, watching it fly by in slow motion." I replied. For the first time in weeks I slept deeply and peacefully despite being on an air mattress with a sleeping bag. My phone started blowing up Sunday evening. Allison must have returned early from Miami. In the span of 30 minutes there were 24 missed calls and 36 text messages, ranging from confused, "What's that note? What are you talking about?" to angry, "You can't just leave over a misunderstanding," to desperate, "Please call me. We can work this out. I love you." I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I blocked her number, poured another drink, and continued my gaming marathon with Cole. My new furniture wouldn't be delivered until Wednesday, but the emptiness of the house felt appropriate somehow. A clean slate. The next morning I called my parents and sister to explain what happened before they heard through the grapevine. Dad was quiet but supportive. Mom was relieved. It turned out she'd had reservations about Allison too but didn't want to interfere. And Kate? Kate practically cackled with vindication. "I knew it," she said. "Did I not tell you? Did I not say exactly this would happen?" "Yes, you're very smart. We're all impressed," I replied dryly. "No, but seriously, Chris, are you okay? House is nice. Business is good. Just lost 18 grand on a ring and about 30 more on wedding deposits. Better than losing half your restaurant and a divorce," Kate said. "Consider it tuition for the University of not getting played again." Monday morning I drove to the restaurant as usual. I had to field some awkward questions from my staff, who'd seen Allison's increasingly frantic social media posts, but I kept it simple. "Wedding's off. Rather not discuss it." My sous chef pulled me aside during lunch prep. "Allison's outside," he said, looking uncomfortable. "Want me to tell her you're not here?" "I don't want to see her," I replied. Allison showed up at the restaurant 3 more times that week. Each time my staff ran interference. One of the servers, a college student who'd always disliked Allison, took particular pleasure in telling her I was in an important meeting or at the bank. Meanwhile, I was settling into the new house, room by room. I set up the bedroom first, then the kitchen. I bought a decent couch and TV for the living room and started making plans for renovating the master bathroom. It was strange how quickly the place began to feel like home. By Wednesday, word had spread. Allison's parents called my parents. Her friends messaged my friends. Our shared social circle fractured along predictable lines. People wanted details. Rumors circulated. Someone started a rumor that I cheated, which Allison did nothing to correct. I maintained radio silence, refusing to engage in the drama. Allison's parents weren't taking it well. Her dad left a voicemail demanding I be a man and fix whatever misunderstanding had occurred. Her mom was worse, sending a text saying I should be ashamed for humiliating their daughter and demanding I reimburse them for their $10,000 contribution to the wedding. Her sister Madison, possibly more entitled than Allison herself, showed up at my restaurant during lunch rush, causing a scene that ended with her being escorted out by my head server. The harassment escalated when Allison's dad parked outside my house one evening, honking his horn periodically for nearly an hour. I documented everything, then had my brother Tim, a contract lawyer in Cincinnati, draft a strongly worded letter threatening a restraining order if they didn't back off immediately. The letter included timestamps, locations, and screenshots of all contact attempts. The behavior stopped. Meanwhile, my own family rallied around me. Dad helped with setting up security cameras at the new house. Mom brought over home-cooked meals when I was working late. Kate stopped by regularly, helping me unpack and organize while providing running commentary on how she always knew that woman was trash. "You know what?" Kate said one evening as we assembled a bookshelf. "I'm actually proud of you." Most guys would have confronted her, made a big emotional scene, given her a chance to manipulate the situation. "You just executed, cold and clean. Thanks." Learned from watching you handle that cheating ex of yours last year. The difference is, I only lost 6 months and an espresso machine. You dodged a lifetime of financial bloodletting. She wasn't wrong. If I'd gone through with the wedding and allowed Allison to be added to the house deed, then discovered her plan during the honeymoon or after, I'd have been legally obligated to split assets with her. The restaurant might have been protected since it predated the relationship, but the house, joint accounts, and anything purchased during the marriage would have been fair game. I still hadn't directly communicated with Allison, which was driving her insane. She showed up at my restaurant again, sent emails to my business account, and even tried to reach me through LinkedIn messages. Thursday night, she ambushed me in the parking lot after closing. I'd stayed late specifically to avoid this scenario, but she must have been waiting for hours. "What is wrong with you?" she said, blocking my path to my car. "You completely misinterpreted a private conversation." I said nothing, just tried to step around her. "This is so like you, Chris. Always overthinking everything." It was a venting session with my girlfriend about cold feet. "You're tossing away 3 years over nothing. Move, Allison." "No, not until you act like a grown man and talk to me." I heard everything. The divorce plan, everything. Clearing out our accounts, all of it. Her eyes narrowed. "What about the apartment? Our lease runs until December." Of course, that's what she focused on. The practical financial implications. Not the betrayal, not the emotional damage, but the apartment lease. "I paid the penalty to break it. You have until June 1st to find a new place." "You what?" "You don't get to make unilateral decisions about we're not married. I can do whatever I want with my money. Speaking of which, I've transferred my money from all joint accounts. The wedding's canceled. Vendors notified. It's done." She switched tactics. Started with the waterworks. "Chris, please. I made a mistake. I was scared about the wedding, feeling trapped." People say stupid things when they're scared. I almost admired the performance. If I hadn't heard her laughing about defrauding me, I might have believed it. "People don't accidentally formulate detailed plans to clean out someone's bank accounts," I replied flatly. "They don't accidentally arrange for their lover to meet them on their honeymoon. You'll regret this. People already think you cheated. I could make things very difficult for your business. Try it. I've got recordings of everything, including that phone call." Her face paled. "You were spying on me? Remember, I came home early and heard you accidentally. Everything after that was just protecting myself." As I drove away, I saw her in my rearview mirror, face twisted in the particular expression of someone who's always gotten her way and suddenly isn't. Meanwhile, I was settling into my new house. Furniture was delivered, internet connected, and I started establishing routines that didn't involve Allison. Her absence became normal. I hired a landscaping service to tackle the overgrown backyard and started planning renovations for the master bathroom. A jacuzzi tub, double vanity, heated floor tiles, things Allison would have loved but that I was now doing entirely for myself. Friday night, Cole came over with wings from that sports bar we used to hit during football season. "So, about that honeymoon," he started. "What about it?" "I already paid for the hotel room. First-class seat is non-refundable." I nodded, not seeing his point. "Well, I happen to have some vacation days saved up and about $800 in travel points. You're suggesting we go to Maui?" "I'm suggesting we take what's already paid for. I book a separate ticket with my points and we enjoy the heck out of an overpriced resort with an open bar." At first, it seemed ridiculous, but the more I thought about it, the more perfect it became, the final middle finger to Allison's plans. "Hell yeah," I said. The next morning, I booked him a ticket using his travel points plus some cash to cover the difference. The hotel room remained in my name. Everything else stayed intact. Our flight was still scheduled for what would have been 3 days after my wedding. Allison found out, of course. One of her bridesmaids worked for a travel agency and saw the hotel reservation was still active while the connecting flights had changed. That sparked a new barrage of attempts to contact me, this time with a nastier edge. "You're taking your friend on our honeymoon? What kind of pathetic loser does that? You can't do this." Read one text from an unknown number, presumably a new phone since I'd blocked her main one. I blocked that number too and continued with my plans. I canceled the tux rentals and notified the venue and vendors that the wedding was off. Some deposits were refundable. Most weren't. The financial damage was substantial but manageable. Between non-refundable deposits, the engagement ring, and breaking the lease, I'd lost around $50,000. But compared to what a divorce would have cost me, pocket change. I'd started meeting with my accountant weekly to reorganize my finances. Restaurant profits were up 15% year over year, and without Allison's expenses to cover, I could reinvest more into the business. I started exploring a catering division that could significantly boost revenue without requiring a second location. The remaining wedding invitations sat in a box in my garage. I'd canceled the order, but the first batch had already been printed and delivered. 50 elegant cream-colored cards with foil stamping and letterpress details, costing $12 per invitation. I kept them as a reminder of what bullet I dodged. During the final countdown to what would have been the wedding, Allison's attempts at contact grew more desperate. She sent a carefully crafted email apologizing for anything that might have hurt me without actually acknowledging what she'd done. A classic non-apology apology. She tried to frame the whole thing as a misunderstanding. How she sometimes says things she doesn't mean when stressed about the wedding. Her bridesmaids launched a coordinated campaign to reason with me. 4 different women I barely knew, sending long text messages about how I was throwing away something special and how Allison was devastated. Not one of them mentioned the actual reason I'd left. Allison had clearly crafted a narrative where she was the victim of my irrational behavior. The scheduled wedding day came and went. I spent it at the restaurant running a special that sold out by 7 in the evening. That night, I sat on my new deck with a sparkling water, scrolling through house renovation ideas on my tablet. I didn't feel a thing except relief. The Maui trip was exactly what I needed. Beach, relaxation, and distance from the storm I'd left behind. Cole and I hiked, snorkeled, and hit every happy hour within a 5-mile radius of the resort. I posted just enough vacation photos to social media to ensure maximum irritation back home. Think she's seeing those posts? Cole asked as we sat at the pool bar. 3rd round of pina coladas in progress, guaranteed. I've gotten 11 blocked calls from different numbers since we posted that sunset pic. The resort was everything Allison had said. Infinity pools overlooking the ocean. Premium service. Luxury amenities. While I'd normally consider it an extravagant waste of money, I allowed myself to enjoy it. This vacation wasn't just leisure. It was declaring financial independence from a relationship that had been slowly bleeding me dry. By the pool, I made conversation with a retired investment banker who'd brought his adult kids on vacation. He mentioned he was looking to invest in local businesses with growth potential. "What kind of returns does a restaurant typically generate?" he asked casually. 2 hours later, we'd exchanged contact information and planned to meet when we both returned home. Sometimes, opportunity finds you when you're not desperately trying to impress someone else. I returned to find my new life taking shape. The restaurant was seeing increased business from a new supplier deal. The house was coming together, room by room. I'd even started playing basketball again on Wednesday nights. My sous chef had implemented a new rotating specials menu that was bringing in customers during traditionally slow weeknights. My landlord offered to discuss a 10-year lease renewal with favorable terms. Even my credit score was recovering from the wedding finance fiasco. Months passed. The Allison chapter began to feel like distant history. Something that happened to a different version of me. I deleted most social media, keeping only what was necessary for the restaurant, so I had no idea what was happening in her life. Frankly, I didn't care. Then one night, I ran into Matt, one of the few mutual friends who'd stayed neutral during the breakup. We were at the same sports bar, catching a game. He slid into the seat next to me during halftime. "Heard anything about Allison lately?" he asked cautiously. "Not a thing. Don't want to." "Fair enough. It's just, man, it's a show." Despite myself, I was curious. "What happened?" "Well, that guy Jason, the one she was meeting, apparently, he dumped her about 2 months ago. Ghosted her after she moved in with him. She's 3 months behind on rent, about to get evicted. Had to sell her car. Parents cut her off completely when they found out what she was planning to do to you." I took a long sip of my water, feeling nothing but a detached sort of interest. Like hearing about a character in a TV show I no longer watched. "Turns out, that boutique job wasn't nearly as profitable as she made it sound," Matt continued. "She was supplementing her income with money from her parents. When they cut her off, she couldn't maintain the lifestyle." "That's rough," I said finally. "Anyway, you catch that trade the Ravens made yesterday?" As we debated NFL roster moves, I realized something important. The best revenge isn't just living well. It's living so well that when you hear your ex is circling the drain, your only reaction is mild curiosity followed by complete indifference. Matt wasn't done with the Allison updates though. She got fired too. Apparently, she was skimming from the register at the boutique. Not enough to be worth criminal charges, but enough to get terminated. I nodded, only half listening. On the TV above the bar, the quarterback had just thrown an interception that might cost them the game. "Bad decision," I muttered. Eyes on the screen. "Yeah, she always did think she was smarter than everyone else," Matt said, misinterpreting my comment. "No, I meant the quarterback. Should have seen the safety coming." Matt laughed. "Man, you really are over her, aren't you?" I realized he was right. I genuinely didn't care about Allison's downward spiral. It wasn't satisfaction or schadenfreude. It was complete emotional detachment. 6 months after what would have been my wedding day, the meeting with the investment banker from Maui finally paid off. He offered to invest $150,000 in exchange for a 20% stake in my restaurant. With the funds earmarked specifically for opening a second location, I accepted after careful consideration and review with my lawyer. The new location planning began immediately. I found a space in a developing part of town, lower rent but growing foot traffic, and set up a meeting.